Okay, let's unpack this then. Imagine for a moment that these ancient religious festivals, they weren't just, looking back at history. What if they were actually like a blueprint, a kind of cosmic map for future events? Today, we're diving deep into some sources that suggest these really surprising connections. We're talking specific biblical feasts linked to major events, things in Jesus's path, future prophecy, and it all seems to lead up to this idea of a 1,000-year kingdom.
Right. And it's fascinating how these sources start by laying out things we might recognize.
Yeah.
The crucifixion, for instance, they map that to Passover. Then burial lines up with unleavened bread. The resurrection with first fruits and the Holy Spirit coming down at Pentecost. Mm-hmm. That part seems pretty established in these views. Yeah. But like you said, where it gets really interesting is how they extend this pattern forward into prophecy.
Okay, so how does that work? You mentioned future events.
Well, the Second Coming, for example, is often tied to the Feast of Trumpets in these readings. And then there's this really critical, very detailed sequence they describe centered around the Day of Atonement.
The Day of Atonement. So for these sources, it's much more than just those ancient temple rituals. It sounds like they see it as this pivotal moment in future prophecy. You mentioned the first resurrection, Satan being imprisoned, even plagues.
Exactly. It's presented as a whole process.
Okay, so what exactly happens during this prophetic Day of Atonement? Can you walk us through how they see that sequence playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. So the research suggests it starts when Jesus first appears, but in the air. At that point, the seventh trumpet sounds. And that sound, it's not just noise, it signals the first resurrection. Immediately after that, these 7 plagues are poured out onto the earth. It's quite dramatic. And only after all those plagues finish does Jesus fully descend. Then he deals with the offenders and imprisons Satan in the abyss. So that entire sequence, from the arrival in the air to Satan finally being bound, that's what they identify as the fulfillment of the Day of Atonement.
Wow, okay. That's incredibly specific. But you also hinted there's more to it, more than just these sort of external events. The sources mention symbolic things happening too, something about the actual Holy of Holies and even Hades. What's going on there?
That's right. And this is where it gets really quite profound conceptually. Think back to the ancient ritual.
Yeah.
The Holy of Holies was covered with incense smoke, right? Well, these sources talk about an actual Holy of Holies. Think God's throne room in heaven being covered with incense as the first 6 trumpets sound, even before the 7th.
Before the main Day of Atonement sequence even starts? Why?
Yeah, beforehand. And the reason given is pretty cosmic. It's said to prove the commandments are true, removing any lingering doubt among the angels. And this, kind of surprisingly, is presented as completing angelic free will, making their commitment absolute. Only after that heavenly process is complete does the 7th trumpet sound and the prophetic Day of Atonement on earth fully begin.
So it's this huge cosmic event then, not just about us here on Earth. It affects, well, everyone, angels included.
Precisely. It connects heaven and earth. So while Jesus is symbolically atoning this heavenly Holy of Holies and sanctuary, simultaneously back on earth, those 7 plagues are being poured out. It's happening in parallel.
Okay.
Then, once that heavenly atonement part is finished, the sources say Jesus moves to atone Hades. Now, they interpret Hades not just as the grave, but as the realm of judgment, kind of like the ancient altar was where judgment happened through sacrifice. Mm-hmm. He atones Hades by descending to earth and destroying the offenders. That act of judgment is the atonement for Hades.
Atonement through judgment. That's a powerful idea.
It is. And right after Hades is atoned through that judgment, then Azazel Satan gets dealt with. They use that specific term, linking Satan to the Azazel scapegoat from the old ritual, and he's cast into the wilderness, which they interpret as the abyss, banished.
And the moment Satan is locked away in that abyss, what happens next according to this timeline?
That's the trigger. The sources are really clear. The 1,000-year kingdom begins immediately, right then. And guess what? They identify that 1,000-year kingdom directly with the Feast of Tabernacles. It just continues this incredibly precise prophetic calendar they see woven into these feasts.
Okay, let's try and wrap our heads around the bigger picture here. This deep dive, it's really shown how these particular sources read the timing, the exact sequence of huge future events. We're talking first resurrection, the kingdom starting, all seen through the lens of these specific biblical feasts.
Exactly. And the Day of Atonement really stands out, doesn't it? It's not just one thing. It's this complex process tying together the 7th trumpet, those plagues, the judgment and cleansing they call the atonement of Hades, and finally binding Azazel Satan. And all of that happens immediately before the 1,000-year kingdom kicks off, which is the Feast of Tabernacles in this view.
It's quite something. The core idea seems to be that these ancient feasts aren't just memories. They're functioning as, like, detailed prophetic calendars, almost like a divine schedule, laying out everything down to the mechanics of atonement, judgment, and setting up this future kingdom. It's definitely a unique way to look at it.
It absolutely is. It suggests a future that isn't just vaguely hoped for, but meticulously planned out.
So, yeah, what does this all mean for you listening? This idea of such an intricate link between ancient rituals, actual history, and detailed future prophecy, it paints a picture of divine planning on a scale that's, well, pretty staggering. It definitely leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it? Maybe this question: if this cosmic timeline is laid out with such incredible precision, what new insights might that offer you about the very nature of the future itself? Something to ponder.